At Investor Central, I'm Mark Lowdy. We're coming to you from the Asia Trader and Investor Convention, where the subject is very much retail investments in the securities markets. But obviously there are many forms of investment, including business investment in this region. And our next guest will tell us that actually not only have the securities markets changed, but so has business. Simon Littlewood joins us from Asia Now. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you for inviting me, Mark.
So actually, what do you mean by the fact that business has changed?
The environment in Asia is never going to be the same again. In a sentence, the days of easy growth are over. And because the fortunes of so many multinationals in Asia have been founded on easy growth, we come here, we set ourselves up, and all of a sudden we're getting 10, 15, 20, even 25% growth in key geographies. There are a set of assumptions about what may happen in a year or so's time when the recession ends. But the reality is that the landscape has shifted irrevocably.
Okay, well let's pinpoint that precisely. What part about business is getting harder? Where precisely is the speed hump, as it were?
Well, I mean, there are a number of things. First of all, because growth is never going to attain the same levels again, large numbers of people are competing for a smaller pie. Secondly, a number of people have got much cleverer about competing for it, and those who are resting on their laurels are going to lose out as a result.
When you talk about competition, you mean the prices have dropped, or?
At every level, more agile, small competitors, not just locals but multinationals as well, and also the fact that when you get a significant seismic shift in the market as you have at the moment, the openness of customers at every level in every value chain to new ways of doing business goes through a quantum leap. So all of a sudden, relationships that many companies have taken for granted, not just for years, but for decades, are up for grabs and are being grabbed as we speak.
I see. But if price isn't the major point of competition, how do companies grab those opportunities and those relationships?
Well, it's a combination of price and service. Essentially, that's what every company sells.
Right.
The reality is, though, that because large multinationals have come to Asia in most cases on the back of existing client relationships here. In other words, they come to Asian markets to service other multinational companies with whom they're working in other markets. They have not developed a hunting sales culture. And by that, I mean that as companies, they have no culture which enables them to take a blank sheet of paper and say, what does the landscape look like? Where do we aspire to play in that landscape? And specifically, what customers and products should we be going after? And how do we then go out and get them? Essentially,
they've forgotten how to do business.
They have forgotten how to sell. Yes, in the way that it actually is meant to be understood. And in fact, our main insight with Asia Now is 10 years old now, and we have a unique database that enables us to look at how salesmen spend their time across the generality of industries in Asia. And what that information has been telling us for years, and we've been around for 10 years, is that salesmen in Asia don't sell. They essentially mediate existing relationships. They are, by and large, order takers. And guess what? The orders are leaving. And those that are actually selling and are actually listening to how the market is changing and are already willing and able to come up with new, more competitive, more creative offerings are essentially going to be taking share away from those who haven't recognized that change.
Geographically, are there differences that you need to be aware of?
Well, I think that the key thing geographically, clearly, is that there aren't very many places in the world now which actually are generating growth. So I've just come back from a lengthy trip to China where I talked to a whole range of multinationals, and there the Purchasing Managers Index, the PMI, which is considered to be a very important leading indicator of economic activity, just got past 50, which means that it's back to expanding again. So sentiment has flipped already in China. After as little as 6 or 8 months, we're back into a positive growth mode. But here's the thing, it has changed because there was a clear contrast among the companies that I talked to between those who are seeing their market going away by as much as 30 or 40% and others who are going to report the same level of profitability in 2009 that they had in 2008. And they've done that by changing on a dime a number of the things that they do. Essentially the way that they deal with their suppliers and the way that they position and execute their selling activity.
Finally, this question may be a little out of the blue, but I know you also have an eye on the political atmosphere in many parts of Asia.
And it gets me into terrible trouble, Mark.
Well, I'm not going to ask you about Thailand because
Okay.
they're in enough trouble already. But my biggest interest really is whether there is a positive side to all these changes. For example, if you're saying that relationships are now up for grabs, is that likely to lead to an increase or perhaps even a decrease in the level of corruption? That those old relationships are not going to hold anymore? That perhaps there will be a change in that sense?
Corruption is changing. Transparency over the last decade or so has changed significantly. Countries like Korea, which were thought to be inscrutable, that's a very changed environment now. And although we've seen setbacks in places like Thailand and Indonesia is still a challenge, I think, yes, you're going to see significant changes. China in particular is doing a huge amount to deal with corruption. I don't consider corruption the leading challenge for multinationals in Asia. The leading challenge for multinationals in Asia is to recognize that they need to create a hunting growth culture in order not just to hang on to the share that they've got, but in order to go out and progressively find the most attractive segments and markets to operate in. Yeah?
Thank you very much. Simon Littlewood from Asia Now. And I'm Mark Lowdy here at the Asia Trader and Investor Convention 2009.